Hello, everyone, and welcome to Counseling Stars. This is another one of our Constellation features. We are super excited for this episode. I'm here with Brittany Ward and Amanda Sakurai. We actually have three of our professors from our program today for this conversation. So we have Dr. Marunga, Dr. Florentine, and Dr. Hodge. And at the beginning of each of our episodes, we start off with a little activity that Brittany will take us through just to get us started. So, Brittany, you want to take over?
Man, you're like, doctor. I was like pretty excited about that. We got all the doctors here. Yeah. So for those of you who are new to our podcast, we each session, each recording session, we start by picking a feelings from the feelings wheel, which is something that we became familiar with during our assessment course. Actually, thank you, Dr. Florentine. And so I'll go ahead and start. It's really a way for us to talk about what we're bringing into the room and to perhaps take a moment to really ground ourselves and make sure that we're being as present as we possibly can, not only for ourselves, but also for the rest of the people on the call and for our listeners, so we can provide a really engaging conversation. So I'm going to go first. My feeling, I am feeling joyful. Also, honestly, I'm feeling exhausted, but I get a lot of energy. And Amanda thinks it's really funny when I say this, but I get really G'd up for these conversations. It brings me a stupid amount of joy. So that's mine. Ash, how are you feeling?
I said I was going to just wing it today. Usually I have two or three that come up, but right now I'm just feeling attentive. I'm very inspired and excited right now for this conversation. I think we are all going to take a lot from it, and I hope the listeners, when they're listening, take something as well. So I'm excited and attentive. Amanda, where are you at today?
I am feeling very successful. I was looking at how many podcasts we've recorded at this point, and this is our 11th podcast. And that makes me very excited and feeling pretty successful. Yes. How about you, Dr. Marunga? How are you feeling?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I'm very honored to be here. I'm feeling excited, but there's also a part of me that's a little bit anxious, if I'm being honest. Yeah, but I'm excited to be here.
We appreciate the honesty.
All right.
Dr. Florentine, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling really grateful. Like I thought my word was going to be excited too, but I think I took a moment of introspect and feel like whenever I went into my PhD program and to do the things, I felt like contribution to the field is always really important for me. And so I'm feeling really grateful that I'm getting to do that today. So that's my word.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Hodge, what about you?
All right, I'll take your word. I'm feeling excited. I'm just really impressed by you all and doing this and 11 podcasts. I don't even know how you found the time with school and everything else. So honestly, I'm really excited for all of you. I'm excited to be here. I think this is a great topic and just appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we'll start off with Dr. Hodge just because you got to go last on your feelings. So let's start with you, okay? First, we want to talk a little bit about that process and journey from graduation to licensure. So if you could maybe walk us through that a little bit, just kind of key steps or any challenges or surprises that you encountered along the way.
I don't know why you picked the chatty one to go first because I have a lot to say about this. So I actually went through, I have this notebook that I've kept with, honestly, with my internship hours, with my licenses. Every time I've renewed, I have them all in this notebook. And thinking about this podcast, I was like, I should check out some dates, right? Like, when did all this happen? So we're going to go back in time a little bit. And I graduated in my master's program December of 2011, but my journey was a little different. I was already working in a community mental health agency, not as a therapist, as a support worker. And I looked and all this memory came back. I actually didn't get my temporary license until almost a year later. Now, this was for a lot of different reasons that were happening in my life, but just to be really honest, I could not save the $75 to take the test. At the time, the NCE, was too expensive for me. And one of my colleagues who I worked with was like, "What are you doing? You just graduated, like get on it." And I was like, "Oh, I just graduated. Give me a break, like I need a breath." So yeah, I didn't get my temporary license until 2012. I didn't end up taking the test till 2013. So from 13 to 2015 was that 2-year time frame. Okay, so I think it's really important to talk about. I thought it was client hours, and I was seeing clients. I was like, yes, I got the 2,000 hours, and we can talk about all the hours and requirements, but at that time, that's the amount I was needing. And I called the board. I'm like, I'm ready. Let's do this. Let's take the next test, right? And there's another one. And they were like, no, it's and 2 years. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure you all read that wrong. I have the hours, so let me do it. They're like, no, read it. It says hours and years. And I did try to fight everybody on that. So I say all that to say I finally got my independent license in 2015. So it's kind of, like I said, it's started with the chatty one. I'm sure other people on their journey may have graduated, gotten their license, and next thing. But for me and where I was at in my life and finances, it just took a little bit longer. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing. You're in New Mexico, correct?
Yes.
See, and I think it varies depending on what state you're in. So that's why we're really blessed to have Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. And so one thing, I think it was in your previous episode, Dr. Hodge, we talked about kind of the financial impact of some of this process. And one thing that we had thought of possibly is just applying for a little bit more of a student loan than you think you need. That way you can pocket that extra few hundred or however much it is now for the NCE, things like that, because we don't always think about our financial impact in this. And I think that's really important. Dr. Florentine, do you have anything to add from the Texas side of you?
Of course, I'm glad you said that, Ash, because I wanted to note that in that license reciprocity doesn't look the same in every state across the country. And so in Texas, things are actually a little bit differently. So in Texas, you have to take the NCE before you can apply for your provisional license. And so that needs to be checked and passed before that even happens. And then there's also a few other requirements that go with that. My personal journey, I think maybe it's important to note what that looks like in Texas. So in Texas, you graduate, that's step one. Step two, you take the NCE. Some people take it before they graduate, some people take it afterwards. After you pass the NCE, then you have to get with a supervisor who's going to be supervising you throughout. In Texas, you need 3,000 hours of supervision of you being out in the field plus supervision while you're doing that. And then after you apply with your supervisor and you pay a fee, then you apply and then you hear back that you are provisionally licensed. And so my personal journey, I took the NCE while I was still in school, and I highly recommend that to anyone who has the funds to pay for it while they're in school. Things were really fresh for me. I was in internship, I was reading the things, I was listening to, at the time, they had the Encyclopedia of Counseling on Rosenthal on tape. And so I would just listen to it over and over again, like as I was making breakfast, as I was driving to work, as I was driving to my friend's house. Like I always had that on repeat. So for me, that really worked for me. I had colleagues that didn't take the NCE till after graduation, and they stalled, whether that was because of finances or because they just didn't want to touch a book ever again, which is totally valid. So that really helped that I took it before graduating. And then I actually waited a few months too before applying for my provisional license because of finances. Provisional license application in Texas at the time was around $150. And then I had to find a supervisor, and then I had to, by the time that started, I had to pay for supervision. At the time, I was paying $75 a week for supervision. Think of 18 months supervision, $75 once a week for 18 months. And so I would just financially wasn't prepared for that. And then I finally got it together and I applied, and graduation to licensure. Man, I applied, it was COVID year. So lots of things happened. So I applied and I got approved January 2020. And I was doing a lot of work, seeing lots of clients, and then COVID happened, and then that really stalled things. And then I moved jobs, and that stalled things. And then that job, the addiction rehab I was working at got shut down. And so that stalled things. And so, but it took me still like 20 months to get it, just because of the amount of clients I was seeing. And so I would say from graduation to licensure, it took 2 years. But I was hustling. I had all the jobs and I was seeing all the clients. So that's my long story on that.
Before Dr. Moronga gets a chance to answer two things, one that you mentioned, Dr. Florentine, a lot of us right now on this call are working. The grad students are, some of us are working and working a lot to make ends meet and trying to prepare for some of the unexpected expenses that we've recently been told about. With one of our other podcasts was with a woman who's now in candidacy from UCO, and she shared the same thing. Like, there's a lot of unexpected expenses, like post grad school even. So I mean, verified by both of you right there. And then also a member of our previous cohort, actually, I'm like following his plan because he started studying in the fall. So his graduation date was like spring, so May, and started studying like sometime in the fall, took the NCE during our like Christmas break time. So then had all of spring semester to focus on internship and school versus like trying to take on that extra burden of studying. And so I think, Dr. Florentine, you talked a little bit about that, about taking it like while you're still in school and kind of as soon as you can, but when you feel prepared enough and can afford it. So
if you can,
I thought that was interesting.
Get it over with. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Get it done.
Sorry, Dr. Moronga, I want to make sure that you get a chance to speak on the subject too and tell us a little bit about your professional journey.
All right, thank you. So I graduated December of 2011, and it took me about 19 months from the time I graduated to when I became licensed. And I think it's advisable, as Dr. Florentina said, to take the NCE as if you take it while you're still in college. Actually, the statistics show that your the pass rate is quite high. But if you wait just a month after graduation, it drops by a big percentage. Anyway, at the time, so I'm in Oklahoma, and that's where I was licensed, and I didn't have to take it before. I could have if I wanted to, but I wasn't offered that opportunity, so I waited until after I graduated. But in Oklahoma, you had to take the OLERI, which is the ethics exam, first, and you had to pass that. And then at that time, you needed to have a supervisor, and you accrue your hours, and you needed 3,000 hours, and at least 1,050 hours of direct contact with the client. And that's all you needed to become licensed. So my journey was, I worked in the community mental health. That's where I was hired, and that's where I'm still at. And so I could accrue the hours quite as fast as, because you have clients there's a lot of clients, there's a lot of individuals who are needing help. So for me, it wasn't a big struggle when it came to the hours, but there were other challenges that just come with working in community mental health. Obviously, there's the cost. I was paying $90 a week for my supervision, and at the time there was an option of deferring. I mean, having them pay for the supervision and then working 2 extra hours after I became licensed. And I didn't take that because I thought, oh man, after I get done, I'm just gonna move on to another position somewhere else. But I stayed, and so it was quite money was quite tight because at that time they were paying me about 37,000, and that was about half the money I was making when I was working at 7-Eleven as a manager. So
That's crazy.
yeah, it
Like,
is.
it's
It
not
is.
even a livable wage, I don't
It's
feel
not.
like.
No, it's
Okay.
not. No, it's not. Yeah. So that's one of the challenges I faced in my journey towards licensure.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you for that. And I think that's one thing we've heard a little bit about with community mental health is they do have those, they offer people kind of like extra hours in return for supervision and things like that. And that's something that we've discussed a little bit. And I want to move into kind of that selection process. When you are moving into candidacy from your internship and you're kind of looking for supervision hours, what helped you find a right supervisor or what site that you went with? Do either of y'all three feel like you really want to share on this one? What helped you find your supervisor? Yeah, Dr. Florentine.
That's a really good question, and I'm glad Dr. Marunga brought that up about the differences in supervision. I too was in community mental health as I was in grad school and as an associate. And I did my hours in community mental health at yeah for internship at that site, and I got a supervisor who was at that site who was a licensed professional counselor supervisor who had supervised other interns and candidates. And my supervision during grad school really lacked. I did not like it. I felt like she wasn't taking the whole hour to meet with me. She grouped me while I was in grad school with other people that were already graduated and provisionally licensed, and I almost felt that I like didn't want to ask too much. I'm like, this is their time, like I'm not trying to take away from that. So that whole experience during grad school, during my internship, I realized I'm not going to take the supervision at the agency for free. I'm going to pay for it, even though very similar to Dr. Marunga, I was making 42 at the time, and I was the highest paid because I'm bilingual and I got a bilingual stipend, which also, doubled my work, of course, but that's for another subject. But so that experience made me realize, yes, I could get supervision for the 2+ years after grad school while I'm working on my hours for free from this agency, and that's what my supervision is going to look like. And I don't like that. And so I made sure to look for an external supervisor. There was another supervisor that was leaving the agency that was going to be supervising on her own. And so I made sure to talk to her. And she had me meet her at a Starbucks. We went through the contract. We went through together, like, what I wanted out of this, what she was looking for. Also, like, we were both interviewing each other, like what she wanted out of a supervisee, like this is what you need to do. And I shared with her what I wanted out of a supervisor. So I think it's really important to really be assertive about that decision as you're looking at it. Yes, financials do matter, but I'm so glad that I went with the person that I went with, and I was struggling paying that $75, but I mean, I'm super grateful that I did. So definitely weigh out those options.
Oh, thank you for that. I think that's insightful. And then Dr. Hodge, yes.
Yeah, I appreciate you both sharing that. I chose the route of not paying for supervision because I didn't have an extra $75, $90 a week. And I also want to say that it really does depend on where you work, right? Some places do require that, and some places do have a supervisor on staff, and they're ready and willing. But they may also be overwhelmed, right? So I will tell you, a lot of my supervisors and the experience I had was pretty rough, right? And so I'm going to say, I guess you get what you pay for, right? Because I was not paying for that supervision. Whoever was the supervisor at the time was who I would meet with. And each agency I worked at, they definitely set that time apart to, go over what I felt was their agenda, right? Like, hey, we're going to talk about your time, or we're going to talk about what not a lot of theory and technique. It was more work related. Almost felt like management, right? Like, oh, well, the starting time is 5 a.m. and you showed up at 5:01. So let's talk about that. I was like, well, I'm just tired. But I did want to say, yeah, I think the short version is you do kind of get what you pay for. And where I was at the time, it was just easier to go financially. It was easier to go with the free supervision, but it was very different than what I had expected. I don't feel with a lot of focus on the clinical work. It was more focused on the work. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds kind of more like administrative things, yeah, than about, man, that I hate to hear that from all of you. You're all nodding your head, and I'm like, that like hurts my heart that you didn't have a top tier experience. And I know that the three of us have actually been reading, not that we're like at that stage where we're looking for a supervisor, but definitely taking our experience in terms of like interviewing our internship site supervisor and asking about like their theoretical framework and what their credentials are and what is their management style of us or their supervision style of us. And I know that that was a critical factor in me selecting the site that I chose. So I'm really sad to hear that. And Dr. Maranga, did you have something else you wanted to tag on to that too?
Yes, just briefly. Yeah, I did have a very terrible supervision, by the way. So I had three supervisors. The first supervisor, I had to go and talk to HR and say that I don't think that I was experiencing similar things that Dr. Hodge was just describing. We're just talking about management stuff. We're not talking about theory. And they're supervising me from their theory of practice, but I'm not interested in that theory. I want to pursue, I want to look at a different theory. So what I do as a supervisor is I'm just open to what the supervisees want. And I do interview my supervisees, and I ask them to interview me as well, so that we can see whether we are matched. And because of that experience, I just try to do the best I can as a supervisor.
So which of you, are all of you LPCSs? Dr. Hodges nodding. Oh, not you, Dr. Florentine, but you are Dr. Maranga? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's food for thought for anyone listening who will be looking for an LPCS in the future. I know the three of us on this call will be, obviously, so thanks for sharing that. Before we really get back to the questions that we sent you before we got started today, I have a question. You know the old adage that if something feels too good to be true, then it probably is. And this is just like, I just am looking for some clarity and honesty from people who are actually been there, done it, and are in the field. So I'm getting inundated now with therapist jobs and either candidacy offerings or like fully licensed. And they are like top tier, paying a lot of money. And so a part of me is like, wow, I'm like exiting grad school. I'm pretty broke now. That sounds like it would be a good option for me. But also I'm concerned and worried. Like, what does that mean? What are going to be the expectations around that? Is supervision going to be included, or are you going to require like extra years tacked on to that? I guess I don't have enough knowledge around what that can look like. Can anyone speak to that? Go ahead, whoever, because I'm not really sure.
I don't know how to start that. I think those would be really good questions to ask if you were to go through an interview process, is like, do you have an inside supervisor, or I'm about to be provisionally licensed. Does that mean that I would need to get my own supervisor? So really asking about that work environment and expectations. How many clients do you expect me to see? I mean, some places want you to see 10 to 12 clients. Some places want you to see 20 to 25 clients. Those are very different numbers. So I think those are really good questions to ask in an interview. Definitely these days they're paying a lot more for therapists than they paid us back in the day. I think just like the field is growing exponentially, which is a really good thing. There's a really big need for therapists right now. So I wouldn't say that money would be the turnoff really, but sometimes I can vouch for, I did have an experience where they threw money at me and I thought it was going to be great, and then I found I was super burnt out. And I wanted to leave so badly, but I didn't, because I felt so stuck and I have to get my hours here. And then this is the place that ended up shutting down. So it was just divine intervention there that I literally ended up leaving, because it ended up shutting down, because otherwise I wouldn't have left and I would have been really burnt out. So
I appreciate that. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Hodge.
Sorry. I just want to add to that it's a very tricky question that you're asking, because two reasons. First and foremost, you all are in this beautiful bubble called graduate school, and you have really great professors, and we love you and we support you, and we're trying our best to get you prepared for the real world, but also there will be that time of like kicking you out of the nest, and yeah, you're going to have to find a supervisor who maybe didn't align with anything that you were taught through your program. So I think that's no one had said that to me, right? I was like, oh, well, I'll find someone from my school and we're going to feel the same way about things. No, I actually found a lot of play therapists who enjoyed working with kids. And I was like, I don't want to do sand tray right now. I'm not saying anything against it, just saying. But that leads to my second point, is it really does depend on your life. Don't count yourself out, because if you have kids and they're in school, you're gonna want to find something on that schedule. You just are. If you don't have kids, if you want to work weekends or overnights, if you like, find something that fits for you, because the money will come, because insurance and people have recognized that mental health is important. I think that's a great conversation to talk about too. Reimbursement rates back in the day, I could even tell you, in substance abuse, at least, insurance wasn't even accepted in some places. So it was out of pocket, right? So we're definitely seeing across the board that the rest of the world has realized, oh, mental health is reimbursable, insurance rates are up. But yeah, there's a big difference between an hourly salary and 1099 positions. And I can tell you where I'm at in my life right now, what works for me and what doesn't was very different 10 years ago, right? When I could hustle and I could go and I could do and I could see whoever, didn't really matter the hours. But your life and what you're doing, and that experience is important. It's really important to just remember that. So even in your cohort, you're going to have people who say, oh, I got all these hours because I'm working weekends and it's wild. And you're like, weekends? Never. So I think all of that's really important to kind of understand that, like the title of this, right? It is the business of mental health. Where I work right now in the agency, I will throw you a lot of money, but you're going to be a 1099. So what you do is what you get paid for. And some people like that and some people don't. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is don't leave yourself out of your decision making, because you will really excel in the areas that you feel comfortable in, and you will really struggle if it's not on your schedule and things that don't work for you.
For people listening who might not have experience in being a contractor, but a 1099 is a document for a contract worker. And that is actually interesting. That's something that the three of us have been talking about, what that looks like. Maybe if we have the option between working community mental health or agency or being a contract worker, what does that look like? which is actually our next question, but I want to make sure Dr. Maranga had an opportunity to speak to the last topic if you felt like it.
Yeah, just briefly. I think I agree with what they said. I mean, you just have to put yourself in the equation. You have to consider, where are you in your life? Is this something that you can do? I think you have to take care of yourself. Nobody else will. So you have to put yourself first in that as a priority. Nobody else is going to consider that, because there's a lot of need. If you work at any place, they want you to do a lot more, but that may not be healthy for you. So take that into consideration.
The wisest words ever spoken. Take care of you because no one else is going to. Get yours first. Take care of you and make sure you're looking out for you, because ultimately at the end of the day, you are yours, and they have a business to run. And I get that. I understand it, respect it, but I mean, yes, we got to take care of ourselves. And so jumping into our next question, we really need some clarity around the difference between agency work and community mental health. I guess even now, like contract work, can someone speak to what that is and what's your experience with that particular place of work for you?
Dr. Hodge, I feel like you had something to say about the contract stuff.
I just like how all of us are like, no, the more we're talking, the more we're like, ooh, are we scaring you guys? We're really not trying to. But it really, again, if you remember that it is a business. So this is I'm gonna, eggshell around this question a lot, because it really depends on who and what you're working for, right? So agency, I have worked in agencies that are run by other therapists, and I have worked in agencies that are run by business people. And I can tell you there's a big difference. I'm not going to spoiler alert all of that. You might just get to figure that out on your own.
Oh, come on.
Well, really, to be honest, working for other therapists, it's great. It's wonderful. We get to sit, we get to talk, we get to share our feelings, and none of us know how to do marketing. Okay, right? We didn't take business classes. We're just guessing. And then if you work with someone who has a business degree, the atmosphere is different, because they know how to read reports and numbers and that side of the brain that I wasn't trained on for 2 years. So every agency or community mental health, there is a bottom line. There is why they were created, right? There's a reason for that. And I think it's important in your interviews to ask for the mission and vision statement of that place, because if it doesn't align with your mission or vision, you're gonna struggle. And if it does align, then that works really well. There are agencies, there are places that I have worked in that have very specific religious views, right? That cut out a lot of different clients. I mean, it really just depends on where you're at and what you're looking for. So that's really all I can say. I want somebody else to say something, because I don't want to scare you guys.
That's actually really helpful though, Dr. Hodge. And I think it's something, I didn't want to take up space here, but I work for 988. I don't represent 988, but one thing that I've taken from it is the need for the community mental health and the need for therapists and people that are licensed to be working those odd hours that y'all were talking about earlier, right? And for me, I'm passionate about access and accessibility. And so when I think about my journey as a clinician, I don't foresee myself working in 8 to 3 or 8 to 5. I foresee myself in that other window, right? Like I work 1:30 to midnight right now. Yeah. And I think that if more people were available during those times, it can really support with the needs that I'm seeing, at least in my, from what I'm seeing where I'm at sitting. And I'm meeting with an LPC supervisor tomorrow, actually, has her own private practice. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation today, because I think it opens up a lot of conversation and questions for me to ask during this. Not to say that I'm looking for her to be my supervisor, but just to meet and collaborate and learn from each other, I think. But yeah, the community mental health, private practice, business private practice, I think that's something we just have to figure out along the way, and just kind of use our own professional judgment. Sorry, I think that was important to say.
No, I totally agree with you. And that's why I said ask for the mission and vision, even if it is just a private practice owner, a licensed person who they started for a reason. I mean, and they should have a passion for a type of client or the work that they're wanting to do. And again, if you align with that, you're going to have a lot of success. Where I currently work, it is a business. We are a nonprofit, but I'm in rural New Mexico. So I'm always looking to hire someone who's willing to do those non-traditional hours, because majority of the clients, they have to work a job from 8 to 5, right? So if you can only work from 8 to 5, it's just going to be hard for you as the clinician to have your clients buy into trading their time for your therapy, right? And I'll let somebody else talk now. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, so I do agree. I mean, you have to just investigate what the mission of the agency is or the organization is. And obviously, initially, you guys may not be able to do private practice. You see, I work for a community mental health, but I also have my own private practice, and I can work in the evenings or on the weekends if I choose to. Not because somebody is making me do that. It's because I choose to do that. So, and that may not be something that is available for you guys when you're starting out. So your options may be limited. So you just have to look out again for your own. What is it that works for you? And are you going to work with people who are adhering to their mission? Because even people with missions sometimes get to a point where they may veer off their mission for whatever reason. So, and it's just good to ask those questions when you meet with them. A good question might be, I mean, how does a regular day look like here? If I was working here, how would that look? You know.
Dr. Florentine, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add. I think going back to your original question, I think the terms community mental health and agency are sort of used interchangeably in our field. I think agency pertains to like maybe a larger institution that's providing mental health care. It's unlike private practice. Private practice is very specific. But sometimes we use sort of the same words interchangeably. Community health specifically, though, is like a government agency. It's funded by the government, only basically taking Medicare and Medicaid. You have a very specific sort of socio-demographic with a certain socioeconomic status. There's your they're flushing through clinicians, there's turnover. But to that point, I mean, we've all worked in community mental health. I'll say personally, I started in community mental health and I was in community mental health for 4 years. And I learned so much. I mean, my experience as a clinician would be vastly different as if I had started out in private practice versus the support that you get in community mental health because it's government funded, because there's so many rules that they have to follow. Like they have to be by the book on so many things, whether that's billing, documentation, like suicide assessments, like everything is so specific. And I was trained that way. And so now in private practice where I am on my fully 100% on my own, I don't have the consultation that I used to have. I am so focused on being by the book because it wasn't just like loosey goosey whatever and starting in community health. But community mental health, you have a very specific type of clientele who are on Medicare, Medicaid, homeless. My personal experience in community mental health, I worked with children and adolescents. So I was doing home visits. I was trained on incident reporting. Like one time I had a friend, like she was going up someone's trailer and she like fell down the stairs. One time I was just sitting on the couch with a client and I got bit by bed bugs everywhere. And so there's like that very specific demographic that you're working with in community mental health, kind of what Ash was saying, the people that like really need help. that are out in the community and they cannot afford mental health services. And then agency, which is also sort of used interchangeably, but agency can be like for-profit, nonprofit. Like Dr. Hodge was stating, for-profit agencies are usually ran by MBAs who look at people as a dollar sign, who look at this person equals a bed equals a dollar sign. And so you're dealing with very different sort of dynamics there, but I'll get off my soapbox here.
No, thank you all so much for sharing your different perspectives and for like clearly defining some of the terminology that is chopped and changed and used interchangeably, because it can be confusing for us who are just entering the field. I'm like, wait, so is agency the same thing? Because it seems like it's the same thing. So I appreciate you like clearing that up for us. But before, something I want to say before hand it off to Ash. Two things actually. One, I in a previous cohort spoke to someone who was negotiating their split, like the pay between like what the agency is going to take and like what they were going to take. And so I think that that is something really interesting that like I don't know that we need to go into a big discussion about it, but just wanted to throw it out there for something that for our listeners to consider, and also maybe where the funding for your agency is coming from, especially like in today's world, because it'd be a little crazy sometimes and funding is getting cut left, right, and center. And so it may be worth considering asking those types of questions too. But Ash, I think that you have the next question.
Yeah, no, I want to stop though. Do any of y'all have anything you want to add on the split or negotiating a split? Or is that something that we just kind of take on ourselves?
I think that you do have to become a really good negotiator, right, in this field. And I want to say, not always negotiating the money, right, but negotiating what can you bring to this, right? So if I really excel working with a very certain population and that's the need, right, come in and share that and talk about your theory and talk about those things to kind of leverage what works for you, right? But if you do talk about splitting and different ideas of like what goes to the agency, what goes to you, it goes a little further than that. Insurance companies can still do that, right? They can say, oh, we'll pay you. I'm going to give you random numbers because I don't work for them, but like we'll give you $200 for your independently licensed clinician to do a 60-minute session. Sure, that's where it starts, but then they can negotiate that. They can audit your stuff and say, well, you didn't put any, you didn't add in your modalities. You didn't say this. So in this note, you're going to have to pay back half of what you said, right? Half of what you took. And you might have to pay back all of what, because we don't see where you're in your notes. We don't see in your writing where you're doing what you said you were going to do. I'm saying that to freak you out, but I'm also saying that because it's a reality. And it's very important when I say, the mission, the vision, but also the policies, right? So if the policy says we are going to put every single note, we are doing a crisis assessment, you better be really good at crisis assessments because you're doing it every single time. So it's important. I would also like throw that in to talk about policies, right? Like we were saying earlier that's different from each agency. Community mental health, different places. Basically, if your policy says you're going to do it, you have to do it, right? So it's also important to kind of know that. And what am I getting myself into? Because it makes it hard to negotiate some stuff and your pay amount if you don't understand the policies, right? I just threw a whole new layer in there that we could talk about, but I think it's important to just have that kind of understanding, right? So in community mental health, you may not be able to negotiate times or leverage your modalities because you're going to have to follow this is the modality that we're using here. And that can change from anywhere that you work. So I think it's important to say that.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think everything y'all are saying is super insightful, and I think it brings me to a point of like, what are some things or what do you wish that our graduate program or graduate programs in general explicitly taught about the business side of therapy? We'll start with Dr. Florentine.
Oh, LOL. I just, this is what I'm hoping to bring to the table as a professor is just more honest professors about their experience and what this looks like. In my graduate program, I didn't have that. And so part of me sometimes walking blindly was like, I wish I would have been told that, whether that was by a professor or by something like this. Like I think I can speak collectively for the group. We're so proud of you guys for doing something like this. Like, I wish I had this back when I was in grad school, just like a space where we can just talk about these things and know about all of these things that we don't know what we don't know. And so just this is awesome that you guys are doing this. But something I wish that I would have had is just honesty, just raw honesty, like what we're all sharing about what the experience is like. Because you are in a bubble, like Dr. Hodge said in grad school, because you're like so excited, you're so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then you don't realize all of these things. And I just want to speak to like just knowing your purpose through and through, like knowing your why. That's what got me through my master's. That's what got me through my PhD. This is why. This is why I want to do this. This is what makes the long nights, easier to sit with, or all the whatever, all the noise, whether that's working in community health or working in all these places, not being able to negotiate things being unfair, feeling burnt out, et cetera, et cetera. It's just knowing your why. But really wish that we had these conversations about the business side and all of these things that I ended up learning later on. But this would have been nice during grad school. So I'm so glad you guys are giving it the space that it needs.
Thank you for that, Dr. Florentine. And we definitely, I think I can speak for all of us. We appreciate your support and feedback on that. Dr. Marunga, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I will second that. I mean, I'll say that I wish, yes, my professors had been, open. I wish I had learned more about writing a note. It's such a simple thing, but it is something that you're going to do over and over and over again. And if you learn how to do it efficiently, then you won't spend a lot of time doing it during your practice. Yeah, just
That feels like that should maybe be our next topic.
yeah, I know. Yeah, and obviously also just learning to think as a business person if you're going to start like private practice, but that's something that maybe you'll do down the road. Just try, and I know it's difficult for us because we come into this field to help people, and we shy away from thinking about money, but the world revolves around money. We could say that. We have to pay our bills. So just thinking about what do I bring, and if I bring this into the therapy room, how much is that worth? Those sort of things.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And Dr. Hodge, do you have anything you'd like to add before we get to our wrap-up question?
Yeah, I'll add, I think we've all kind of said this in one way or another, but know your worth, right? You are worthy. I think we talked about it too. As a supervisee, what you bring to it, your knowledge is worthy, but I've said this before and I'll say it again, but stay humble. I mean, you just heard Dr. Florentine say she was sitting somewhere and then got bit by bed bugs, right? Like, do not go into that home and that space and think, oh, I have my master's and I'm worthy of hundreds of dollars each time I do this. No, we're still here to help. We're still here to support. And you may find yourself in situations like that. You may find yourself in someone's home and you're worthy and what you bring is important, but stay humble through the process.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that for me, the humility piece connects with everything you say, Dr. Hodge. I really appreciate that from your professional identity and the way you interact with us. And so we'll go ahead and bring it to our wrap up. So I'm going to ask, what's one thing that you wish someone had told you before you entered the field, whether it's about emotional labor, money, bureaucracy, self-advocacy, whatever it is. And then if there's anything else you'd like to add about the business of mental health, and we'll start from the top. We'll go with Dr. Marunga first, and then Dr. Florentine and Dr. Hodge.
The one thing I wish somebody had emphasized, I mean, they did tell me this. They told me about the emotional labor, Uh, I heard what they were saying, but I think the experience of it was very different. And then when I found myself working with kids in community mental health who had been abused, who had gone through horrible trauma, and I was having nightmares myself, having trouble sleeping, it was very difficult for me to figure out how to deal with that. I wish somebody had told me that I needed to prepare myself before I started doing that work, and I wish my supervisor at the time would have come up with better strategies to help me kind of deal with that. That's something I wish somebody would have emphasized.
Dr. Florentine?
Yeah, personally, I wish I would have gotten a lot more support around being a very inexperienced bilingual clinician. When you're bilingual, you're sort of thrown into the fire because you're like, okay, go counsel all the people that we have that speak Spanish. And it's like, I went to a master's program in English. So, like, what? I don't know these very technical, specific words and interventions and how to deliver these things in Spanish. And so I wish I would have gotten more support around doing all of that. And, as a bilingual clinician, it kind of sometimes does feel really lonely because there's just a lot of extra work that we have to do. So that's what I wish I wouldn't gotten. And I think, like Dr. Marunga was saying, like your experience is priceless. And so you'll go through it, and that's how you're going to learn. You're going to learn by trial and error, and just be kind to yourself in the process.
Thank you for that. Dr. Hodge?
Yeah, I echo both of those, everything that they had shared. And I guess, yeah, your notes, your DAP notes, holy moly. Like, I wish we would have gone over that more. Definitely continue your self-care. I really agree with that. A lot of when I meet with a new supervisee, that's actually my first interview question is, how are you taking care of yourself? What does that look like? And it's beyond just going for a walk and bubble baths. It's really like, how do I hold that emotional space when this work starts to drive me a little nutty, right? And I guess that'll lean into, I wish someone, would have said that more than likely one of your clients will commit suicide and it cannot land on your shoulders. It it'll affect you. There's no way to not say that, but still having support and still having a good supervisor who will support you as a person, right? And going through that. I don't know if it's happened to the other professors, but I've lost clients, and that, I don't know if we talked about that enough, right? Or I don't know how often we had the space in my program to talk about that. It was more, just don't have that happen, right? Here's all the interventions and here's all the things, but it still happens, right? And it's not a reason to quit or leave the field or say I'm not good enough. It's a learning experience to keep going, and like they both said, finding your way to do that and finding that space to heal and your own self-awareness to stay in the field and keep, providing the service.
Absolutely. And thank all of y'all for all of your insight, all your expertise, everything that you've shared with us today. This is a super important episode for us. I think the business of mental health, ever since you mentioned it, Dr. Hodge, a couple of weeks ago, has been kind of the forefront of our thoughts, kind of where we go from graduation. And so thank you all for sharing everything. Y'all, this has been another episode of from Counseling Stars, one of our Constellation features, the business of mental health. We do ask that anyone please follow us on social media, share this with anyone in your community, anyone in grad school, anyone in the field that may benefit from it. So thank you all and have a good rest of the day.